What's up, Wonders of London fans? It's me, Vincent from Wonders of London. Hope you're all doing well and having a good morning, afternoon, evening, etc. wherever you are. Now, last week we showed you autumn in Hyde Park. As you can see, here's a bit of autumn in Hyde Park for you today. But this week we are leaving Hyde Park behind and heading into Kensington Gardens. So welcome to the mini tour this week, where we will be exploring Kensington Gardens. Now, we do have a Hyde Park and Kensington Gardens tour, so if you're ever in London and looking for a tour to do check us out. But welcome to Kensington Gardens, right here. And in fact, if you watch the Hyde Park video, you may remember I kept calling this lake the Serpentine or Serpentine, but as soon as you cross under the bridge or over the bridge, depending on how you come to the park on this side, this body of water, same body of water, becomes the Long Water, because we are in Kensington Gardens now and no longer in the Hyde Park. And here's our first glimpse of autumn in Kensington Gardens. Now I'm going to show you my second favourite bridge in Kensington Gardens. Now bear in mind, sorry, not my second favourite bridge, my second favourite bench. Now bear in mind, this is only my second favourite bench in Kensington Gardens. I will also show you my favourite bench in Kensington Gardens. Now, one of the reasons this is my second favourite bench in Kensington Gardens is because it's secluded, but also pigeons like to hang out over here. So you may get presents from the pigeons, but I just adore this little glimpse of the lake there. How lovely is that? You can come at it this way as well. Now over here we are on the Kensington Gardens side of the bridge. If you watched our Hyde Park video, you may remember that side, which is the Hyde Park side of the bridge. But today we are checking out the wonderful Kensington Gardens side of the bridge. Of course, we've got some lovely reflections of the trees on the water there, and we are looking at the Long Water as opposed to the Serpentine Lake. Now, Kensington Gardens came into existence technically after William III, William of Orange, and his Queen Mary II bought the house that would become Kensington Palace, and we're going to finish this tour just by Kensington Palace today. But when they bought that, then we had the kind of formation of Kensington Gardens. Before that, the land had technically belonged to the church, but there are some beautiful gardens to walk through. I always have the feeling that Hyde Park on the left-hand side is more of a wild sort of park. It is, of course, bordered and very well manicured, but not as well manicured as parts of the Kensington Gardens, as we will see in a few moments when we enter the gates. At the moment, we're kind of straddling the border between the two parks, which are, of course, Hyde Park and Kensington Gardens. And we'll show you a map just up on the right over here, but do have a look once again at the wonderful colours of autumn.
Yeah.
And here we are, once again, welcome to Kensington Gardens. Temple Gate.
Yeah, but here in Albert, we're going to go this way, right?
And here are the opening times of Kensington Gardens. Hyde Park technically closes at midnight, although one could argue that it doesn't close at all. But here is a map of the wonderful Kensington Gardens. There are so many things to see and discover here. There is a map of the two together, but today we are exploring from Temple Gate, Kensington Gardens. First, we're going to go check out Queen Caroline's Temple. Now, over there we can see Queen Caroline's Temple. which according to the park is a classical style summer house overlooking the Long Water east of Lancaster Walk. It was of course designed for Queen Caroline, for whom the Long Water was created for as well, around 1734 to 1735. And the architect is said to have been William Kent. Some of the inside actually dates back to the year 1821, when the park was first opened to visitors. Here we have the beautiful Queen Caroline's Temple. Now I'll be honest, I don't quite see how this could be a house. Perhaps the entrance to a house, but not quite a house in its entirety. Having said that, I would not mind living here. If they just put a couple of walls and a door, I'd be happy at home. Let's have a look at the interior. Needs a bit of cleaning up. Lovely high ceiling. And that is your view in the autumn. Gorgeous. There we have it, Queen Caroline's lovely temple in the Kensington Gardens. Now, what is your favourite season? What's everyone's favourite season? Mine is autumn. And the famous philosopher Albert Camus famously said, autumn is a second spring when every leaf is a flower. That quote is not verbatim, but something to those effects. And we can see the beautiful colours of autumn right here. Look at that beautiful tree. Now remember, if you ever come to Hyde Park or the Kensington Gardens, there is no bathing, fishing or dogs permitted in the lake. Well, that is, bathing, fishing and dogs are not permitted in the lake, which of course over here is known as the Long Water. Now in the distance over there on the other side of the Long Water there's an interesting arch, and this is actually Henry More's The Arch. Henry More was born in Yorkshire in 1898 and died in 1986 at Perry Green, his Hertfordshire home. And the arch, located in Kensington Gardens at the end of one of the longest uninterrupted avenue vistas in London. And you can see from there all the way to Kensington Palace. And it's derived from a fragment of bone and enlarged from a small model only a few centimetres high. And it's a wonderful example of Henry More's magnificent artistry. Now, a wonderful thing about Kensington Gardens and Hyde Park, and generally most of the London parks, is there are a lot of amazing trees. And some of these trees are so old that they're protected so people don't go climbing on them. And as you can see over here, we have fences bordering these magnificent, brilliant old trees, truly great trees of London. There's another bit there. They also border parts of it so people don't go in these areas, so they can be preserved and reserved for wildlife, the squirrels and the birds and nature. A few years ago you actually used to be able to go onto this part, but thankfully they have closed it off and protected it. And there is a lot of wildlife to be found in Kensington Gardens, including but not limited to the grey herons, hairy-footed flower bees, mandarin ducks, Dorpton's bats, peacock butterflies, London plane trees, English oak trees, veteran sweet chestnuts, and it is quite fantastic. surveys have recorded that there are 156 different species of bird in the park, including tawny and little owls that perch by their favourite tree hole. And you have areas of lowland acid grass in the park as well, which is quite phenomenal. And of course, coupled with that, you have these brilliant views of the Long Water. Now this is quite fun, because we saw similar birds doing a similar thing in Hyde Park on the Serpentine, and now here they are doing it in Kensington Gardens on the Long Water. Very lovely. And on this spot just behind us, you have the wonderful statue of Peter Pan. J.M. Barrie, the creator of Peter Pan, actually lived not too far from here. This sculpture was actually done by George Frampton. Now in Hyde Park you have another sculpture, the fountain, which is Boy with Fish, which is of course connected to Lewis Carroll and Alice in Wonderland. Do you prefer Alice in Wonderland or Peter Pan? Here we have the Peter Pan statue with fairies and squirrels, rabbits, snails. Very detailed, beautiful sculpture. We have Wendy there and little mice hiding in the corner there. That is of course the George Frampton Peter Pan sculpture right here by the Long Water in Kensington Gardens. I believe they filmed the Finding Neverland movie here as well, by the way, in Kensington Gardens. Now, the arch and the Peter Pan sculpture, not the only sculptures or memorials that you can find here in Kensington Gardens. There are so many wonderful sculptures and memorials like this one over here, Physical Energy by G.F. Watts, OMRA. And Physical Energy is quite a phenomenal sculpture. You can see the arch in the distance there. But Physical Energy is an exploration of the human idea, the human desire to explore the world, discover what is beyond the horizon. And in fact, if you come at the right time, when it's not cloudy, you can get a wonderful shot. Because look at the rider, he's shielding his eyes from the sun in the horizon there. So we are exploring, discovering new things, and it's quite fitting at this moment when there is talk of exploring space once more. But even then, this was actually designed originally for a man I'm not a fan of, Cecil John Rhodes. And of course, as you can see over here, Physical Energy is a sculptural masterpiece, a universal embodiment of the dynamic force of ambition. 3 bronzes were cast from of this sculpture, of which this is the second, and the other 2 are in South Africa and Zimbabwe. And in fact, the original was cast to be on Cecil John Rhodes' grave. Now, Cecil John Rhodes was both an explorer and hence the idea of exploring the world exemplified in this particular sculpture. But not only was Cecil John Rhodes an explorer, he was also a colonizer, and he would found what would eventually be known as Rhodesia, and would eventually change name, technically 2 countries, but change name to Zimbabwe. 3 countries in fact, if I'm not mistaken, and it is quite an interesting thing. But there are of course 4 sculptures of that Physical Energy, and in fact that's by no means the only sculpture dedicated to an explorer. If we follow this wonderful avenue, we will arrive at that sculpture that you can just see appearing amidst the amazing autumn colours. And that is in fact the Speke Memorial, spelled S-P-E-K-E. May have pronounced that incorrectly. And Speke was a very interesting individual. We can see the inscription there, Victoria Nyanza, and the Nile. Now Nyanza, in some African languages, of which there are many, but in some particularly southern African languages, sub-Saharan African languages, Nyanza means lake. And John Hanning Speke was an explorer who lived between 1827 and 1864. And he was the first European, while on an expedition with Richard Burton to East Africa, to discover Lake Victoria. And of course he would go on to claim that Lake Victoria was the source of the Nile, a mystery that had eluded humanity collectively for thousands, if not tens of thousands of years. However, in 1864, Speke died, killed in a shooting accident by his own gun. Very mysterious death of the explorer Speke. Now, one thing about exploration in those days, and to a certain degree when we look at space exploration as well, is that when you explore something, you, in quotation marks, discover it. And of course, exploration is big money today, as it was back in the day, because once you find something or discover it, despite the fact that it had been there already and it was known by many different people, you could claim it, you can claim it for whomever has sponsored your expedition, your exploration. And of course that will make it very big money, which makes his mysterious death by his own weapon a very interesting thing. He was actually due to speak at a symposium to declare that he had found the source of the Nile. However, he died before he could do that. In any case, let's leave Speke and check out a couple more interesting sculptures in the park. Now, as I'm always saying, autumn is simply wonderful, especially because of all the colours. But I can show you exactly what I mean by all the colours of autumn right here in the Kensington Gardens. Look at this wonderful plethora. These myriad wonders of nature. Simply gorgeous. Look at that rainbow. Of course, as we move aside, there are the wonderful structure in all of its majesty. It's a lovely area to come and sit, especially on a rainy day. You can just escape the rain and sit to enjoy this view. Now, perhaps the saddest part of Kensington Gardens can be found by the Victoria Lodge right here by Victoria Gate. Now, this is the Victoria Lodge, and the sad part of the lodge is behind the lodge. There used to be a time when you could visit the little garden behind the Victoria Lodge. Do look up online, sometimes they do allow people to visit it. And of course, if you are looking for it, it's on Bayswater Road by the Victoria Gate. So this gate here is the Victoria Gate, and the 274 bus to Lancaster Gate will get you there. But you want Bayswater Road. And when you're here, try and have a look on the inside. It's very difficult to see, but there are spots where you can see it. Can you see those little headstones, the tombstones? And there are so many of them. The more you go down here, look at that. This is the Pet Cemetery, which is a very sad and touching part of Kensington Gardens. If you look on the park website, you might find information on how to visit the pet cemetery. It did used to be open to the public, but at least now you know where it is. Now, another lovely little lodge in Kensington Gardens is that one over there. Simply beautiful. I would not mind living here, guys. And it is none other than Buck Hill Lodge. How lovely is that? Imagine living here. At Buck Hill Lodge. Now, back to the sculptures. There are lots of really wonderful sculptures and memorials, like this one, which as yet has no name or plaque around it, but I just love looking at it, with all the stag beetles and the wonderful wood carving and woodwork that has gone into this. And you can see the leaves and fronds, little berry-like plants, but it is not the only cool sculpture that you have in the area. You also have this wonderful water fountain. I don't think works. Actually, it might work. We'll check if it works. But it's two little bears hugging. How lovely is that? And you can check. Yep, the water works. There it is, two little bears hugging right there. How cute is that? And this area alone has so many cool things going on. Did you know you can buy an ice cream from a Rolls-Royce Phantom 2 in Kensington Gardens? Right here. How wonderful is that? It really is the Rolls-Royce of ice cream vans. And then, directly afterwards, you can go into the Italian gardens, which were designed by Prince Albert for his wife, his beloved Queen Victoria, the great Queen Victoria. How phenomenal is this? And just check out some of the views that you can get from within. How lovely is this? You have these fountains over here. Now these fountains are in danger of falling apart. I believe they used to be stone and they were in danger of falling apart. But it will cost about £750,000 according to some sources to repair these wonderful fountains in the Victoria Italian gardens rather, designed for Queen Victoria. And that was quite a princely sum. But someone came to the rescue, and it was none other than Tiffany's, of Tiffany's & Co. So they footed the bill and helped to preserve these gorgeous fountains. And we still have them here with the little ponds and water features all around. How lovely is this little spot of Kensington Gardens. And of course we have this wonderful central fountain looking to the long water there. Very lovely, just looking at the water as it pours out of the vase into the long water there. Of course we have the swan drinking. Lots of swans to be found in Kensington Gardens on the long water. As we continue this way, as I mentioned, it was designed by Prince Albert to give as a gift to his beloved Queen Victoria, but sadly Prince Albert died before he could give it to Queen Victoria. But we still have the portraits of Queen Victoria here and Prince Albert on the other side over there. And right there, that bench actually has an inscription to Tiffany's for conservation, because as I mentioned, they did the design, conservation and beauty, the Tiffany and Co Foundation, because they did give the money to maintain these wonderful gardens designed by Prince Albert over here. Now, one of the most amazing, if not the most amazing sculptures in London, in England, in Britain, in Europe, perhaps even in the world, is that sculpture that you see peeking from behind the trees there. This is the Prince Albert Memorial. We were just in the Italian gardens a few moments ago, and Prince Albert and Queen Victoria truly loved each other. And as I mentioned in the Italian gardens, the gardens were not finished before Prince Albert died. And we can see how much he loved her by designing Queen Victoria, or designing those gardens for Queen Victoria. But here we have a reciprocation of Victoria's love for Albert in the Prince Albert Memorial in Kensington Gardens. Now you can see at the moment they're doing some restoration works, which means hopefully they'll be reopening the memorial for people to visit, because you used to be, before the lockdowns and everything, you used to be able to come and go through the gates, the iron wrought and gilded gates there, and visit up the stairs, get up close and personal to the memorial. But even if you look at the ground here, it is a work of art, a masterpiece. And there we have the Prince Albert Memorial. This is of course the Victorian age, which was perhaps the greatest age of the British Empire. And on the furthest corners, on the outside of the memorial, we have representations of the furthest reaches of the British Empire. And we start here with Africa, and we're going to go round to see the four outer corners and periodically gaze at the majesty that is in the centre. There we have Prince Albert and his profile, simply phenomenal. And we're coming up on Asia now, which is quite majestic. As we've gone round Asia, we can have a look at Prince Albert head on. And I'll zoom in for you guys over here so we can get a closer look at the memorial. This is based on the Eleanor crosses, one of which you can find just outside Charing Cross Station. There is Prince Albert. Now, Prince Albert and several other individuals came up with the idea for the Great Exhibition in Hyde Park. And when they had the Great Exhibition, they raised so much money, they were able to build that building that we see over there, which is the Royal Albert Hall. And you can go there for concerts and performances and the proms as well, the BBC proms. But as we continue back here, we have Europe right there, and we can see some of the works that they're doing over here as we slowly approach America. It's starting to rain a little bit now. It wasn't supposed to rain today, so I don't have an umbrella, unfortunately. But hopefully it's just a light shower, light drizzle as we approach America and do an almost 360-degree turn around the Prince Albert Memorial. As we've seen the Albert Memorial, I'm going to show you one of my favourite bits of the park on the other side of the Prince Albert Memorial. Not the cafe, although I do need a coffee, but it is right next to this little cafe in the park over there. It is the lovely South Flower Walk over here. And if some of you may remember, I did promise you my favourite bench in Kensington Gardens. It is here in the South Flower Walk. Let's go look for it. There's another entrance over there. But look at this lovely avenue. Now we are almost at my favourite bench. It's not this one on my right, nor is it these ones in this little crescent in the middle of the South Flower Walk. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 benches. No, once again, someone is sitting on my favourite bench right there in front of us, under my favourite tree in Kensington Gardens. Look at that. Another tree you can walk into. Now, as we approach the end of the South Flower Walk, got another little sculpture, really lovely little sculpture. And it's a sort of dog watering spot as well. First got to get out, but there you have it. A little dog over here. As we come up here, we have the final avenue of this tour. We're almost at the end. Got a couple more sculptures to show you, and the wonderful Kensington Gardens. This grand avenue will take us to our last stop, right up there. How lovely is that? And here we are on our final approach to Kensington Palace, the building in front of us over there, with some very beautiful gates. Now, Kensington Palace, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, was built for William III, William of Orange, and his Queen Mary II. Now, they actually had equal power, which makes them one of the most fascinating royal couples in English history. And they wanted to live here. They turned this into their palace, their sort of London residence. Now, a house had already existed here, and they just hired Sir Christopher Wren, who designed St Paul's Cathedral, which is perhaps his masterpiece, one of the most amazing buildings in London. But they also hired a man who had been Christopher Wren's apprentice, or his protege, and that was none other than Nicholas Hawksmoor. And they told them to build a palace on the cheap and as quickly as possible, because William and Mary wanted to move in for Christmas. So it was a very fast job, very quick job, and as such they decided to just maintain the general look of the building and just expand it and use bricks. And in fact the statue we see over there is none other than William III, William of Orange. Now we have a couple of other royal statues which I'd like to show you in a few moments. Now over here by the round pond we get another lovely view of Kensington Palace there, and very shortly we'll see one of the people who is perhaps the most famous resident, or maybe second famous resident of Kensington Palace, and it is none other than the great Queen Victoria, who spent a sad childhood alone and friendless, at least with no peers, no friends of her age, here in Kensington Gardens, in Kensington Palace. And I do love her sculpture here because you can see a lovely reflection in the pond around her over there. And when she grew up, she would, when she became queen, she would live in Buckingham Palace. But for most of her life, she would have mixed memories, both fond and very sad, of Kensington Palace behind her over there. Now Kensington Palace is one of the royal palaces that you can actually get tickets to visit, discover, explore and enjoy, with 200 years of royal history. And of course home, 300 years of royal history, and home to the young royals of Britain for quite a while. And in fact at the moment we have an exhibition, Kensington Palace Life Through a Royal Lens. But perhaps one of the best spots of the gardens and the palace is of course the autumn leaves, as I've been saying the entire time, but it is the sunken garden. And the other perhaps most famous, or second most famous resident, I would say most famous resident of Kensington Palace, loved this spot that we're going to see. And who is it? Well, that is none other than the late Princess Diana. By the way, may the Queen Elizabeth II rest in peace, and may Diana rest in peace as well. But here in the sunken garden, this was the spot said to be Diana's, Princess Diana's favourite part of Kensington Gardens. And we can already see why with this kind of laburnum walk that we're going through. But this is not her favourite spot. Her favourite spot was right there, with this lovely view of the palace. And of course Princes William and Harry commissioned this sculpture of Princess Diana, which a lot of people don't like, but it is quite an interesting sculpture. And if you follow me round this way through this lovely walk, we can see the sculpture from other vantage points. I have a look over there in the distance. The water you see is the round pond, but we're coming up on this, in this direction. There we have the profile of Princess Diana. Do you guys like this sculpture? I think personally I like it, especially because of its location in the sunken garden, which was Diana's favourite place. To mark the 20th anniversary of Princess Diana's death, they actually planted her favourite flower, a white rose, in the gardens here. And it was so beautiful to see that display. As I was saying, try to visit the parks at least once a season if you are able to, because it is simply magical and majestic, and the plants are always different and being changed. If we come up over here, we're approaching the end of this tour, guys. Hope you enjoyed our exploration of Kensington Gardens, ending right here by Kensington Palace. Now, one of the amazing things about Kensington Palace is even if you don't have a ticket, you can visit the cafe and get a coffee. Unfortunately, you will no longer be drinking coffee with Prince William and Princess Kate because they have only just recently moved out to Windsor. But you can always say, I had a coffee with some of the other minor royals. Don't have to let anyone know that they weren't there with you. But there we have it. This is where we end the walk. Hope you've enjoyed this little tour, guys. I've been Vincent from Wonders of London. Of course, remember, if you're ever in London, we do have many different tours, so do check them out. But I've been Vincent, and do have a lovely rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, etc. wherever you are. Bye.